So it's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's really early, but I've got to deal with this. I need to get this onto our plot. Now we get local drop-offs quite a lot. Now this is the fourth pile in the last 4 days. So we've had quite a bit, but we do need to cover the rest of our allotment. Now we only really do this once a year, and sometimes we'll patch up little areas that got a little bit more muddy. But this is the job I've got to do today. Fork this into barrows and then get it on the plot. I've already done about 60 barrow loads. So I just need to get through the rest of this. This stuff's okay. There's a lot of twiggy bits in it, but there's a lot of it that's actually really quite fine. So let me go and get the wheelbarrow. Now you can see on some of this, there's a lot of leafage and stems and things like that. Really, there are certain things that you don't want, like chopped up bramble root and things like that. But we've had this, I think we had this type when we first moved onto the plot a few years ago. And it broke down beautifully and enriched the soil really well. Now the good thing about woodchip is because it's a completely natural product, and it really does a twofold job. One, it stops the area flooding so much. Well, that's what we found this year with all the extra rain that we've actually had. And two, as it rots down, it actually refeeds that soil, enriching what you've got on below. Now, as an example, this is new wood chip, but this area is where we had the old chip for the longest. Now, this was several inches deep, and as you can see, it's really turning into some fantastic medium. So if I want to change any areas in the future, I've got a fantastic start with a lot of this older wood chip, where I can just sweep the newer stuff away, which is this stuff, and just take it to this topsoil. Because within the next year, this topsoil here, majority of that will be broken down, and we'll be left with some fantastic rotted wood chip. Now, I may have mentioned this before. The previous tenant of this allotment actually took a good, I think it was almost a foot of topsoil off of this particular site and took it to another one that he'd actually acquired. So it was very sparse here. It was very compacted clay, all the big boulders, tons and tons of glass, which I still dig up massive shards of glass here on this plot, plus an awful lot of rubbish because he burnt rubbish on this plot. Now, I'm not talking allotment rubbish, I'm talking commercial waste rubbish. In the end, that's why he lost this plot. So, even though it looks like there's an awful lot of paths here, and I've limited my growing space, there's a reason why we're doing it this way. So, if I was to enrich or to dig over all this whole area and make it into dug beds or put paths or paving slabs or anything else, one, for me, it's going to be an awful lot of hard work for that, and I just don't have time, but I still want to be able to grow an abundance of food. By using the wood chip, I don't have to do that. Now, I do no dig beds pretty much on the whole of this side, apart from one or two that is kind of been done half and half. When I added this last year, when I added this probably the year before, because I think that's when we had it, about a year before. I think it was in February, I think. The ground was, like I said, very clay. Adding this topsoil has really started to rot down that first couple of layers that we've actually put on. So all we've done is top it up maybe once, if we're lucky, sometimes twice a year, depending on how the weather's been. I don't get no sogginess, I don't get no mud stuck on my feet, because I don't know whether you're like me, I absolutely hate having clayey, claggy mud stuck to the bottom of my shoes. Now, I love the texture of soil, I love handling it, and I love the smell and the richness of it, but I don't like it 2 inches deep on my boots. So this reduces that fact. Secondly, it also helps with, like I said before, a little bit of flooding. I have found I can garden down here at any time of the year and not get too muddy, because the wood chip stops that from happening. Now, if you want to do your wood chip and you want to have the less mud experience, shall we say, it does have to be quite deep and you do have to top it up. So this method is only really viable if you can get free, good wood chip delivered to you locally. Now, there's lots of councils that will do it if you have an allotment site. There's lots of tree surgeons that are desperate to get rid of wood chip because it costs them quite a lot of money to actually dispose of it at a site. So there is ways around it, but you do need to make some friends and ask those questions. Can I have some? So yesterday I came and I did a few barrow loads. The day before, I think it was about 60 barrow loads. But while I'm getting so much so regular, I want to do a really good top dressing. Now, I'm not going to be greedy, and I have actually arranged it to be delivered regular for the other plot holders. But I think before I tell them that I can get them free wood chip, I want to make a nice good pile somewhere where I can top up and rot down. Now, we do have one compost bin at the top that we've actually just filled with wood chip. I think right at the very beginning when we first took on the plot, and we've used half of that this year for one of the raspberry beds, which has been absolutely fantastic. And now I'm just gonna, it's one of those areas I just let it be and let it naturally rot down. Whether it will take a year, 2 years or 3 years, it will be where it will be. But I'm gonna make a second one to rot down, because I want to make as much homemade compost and mix in different nutrients as I possibly can. So that's been my plan from the very beginning of actually moving on to this first site, was to get wood chip down in the areas that I wasn't going to grow for that year and let that naturally enrich the soil beneath. Now, I've noticed since using wood chip, the amount of worms have dramatically increased, which is great news. And now I will keep topping up any areas throughout the year. Now, this should be our last big top up of this year. So I've got to crack on and get on and cover the rest of this. Now, most of this was not long actually done, but while I've got it, again, I'm just going to cover it, get it all sorted as much as what I can possibly do. And it massively, massively reduces the amount of weeds. And what weeds you do get are unbelievably easy to pull out. Sometimes you will find that you'll get dock leaves that go much deeper than the wood chip. And yes, you will have to use a little trowel or something to actually dig it up. But in general, any weeds that I'm finding growing in the wood chip is seriously easy to hoe off, or you can literally remove them with your hands. Most of the dandelions that I get growing in the wood chip, I don't even have to use a hand trowel because they just come out with the full root, which is fantastic. Now, my advice would be, if you are using wood chip as an alternative way to path your allotment site instead of using slabs or grass, is to make sure that you do not mix it into the soil bed. As this rots down, it will steal nitrogen. And if you have all that mixed in through your bed, your plant growth is going to be really, really weak. We don't top the top of our beds with wood chip. We leave that be. We don't mulch with wood chip. Maybe on our flower bed, which will be starting later in the year, but we won't be doing it on our veggie beds, because you really will have poor growth if you do that, especially if you've got it in areas where those roots are going to grow. Another great reason for using it on your path, mind you, the plants that you've got in your beds will actually start rooting out into those pathways, giving it even more nutrients. Now, this might take a year or two for it to start having this kind of dramatic effect, but eventually, as it rots down, that's exactly what your plants will do. So if you've got no dig beds like us, where we don't have sides or we don't have them raised, they're just on the ground, it gives the plants even more room to spread and to grab as much of that nutrients as they possibly can. Now, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Not everybody agrees with using wood chip. I love a grass path, but for us, we can't do a grass path. We've got nowhere to safely store a lawnmower or a strimmer. I'm not going to lug it backwards and forwards from the allotment, and it's going to take up space in our shed. We don't have any grass at home that we use a lawnmower for. We actually have borders, flowers, ponds and natural scape. The great thing about wood chip is I don't find it slippy, so long as you haven't got a weed membrane underneath, because then you're stopping all those fantastic bits of nutrients getting to your soil, and it's laid directly on top of your soil, either with a bit of cardboard which will rot down within one season, so your wood chip will be touching that soil. I find that it's not slippy at all, and I find it much safer for myself, or I found it much safer for myself, using wood chips as paths than any other method. In fact, when we first got this plot, there was half a path here on slabs, and we kind of finished it off with some slabs that we found. Again, I have slipped on this. If there's been any mud on here or excess water or any weeds growing, I have slipped quite easily. Again, it's not something that I've done on wood chip, so long as you've got it deep enough and you haven't got it on a weed membrane. So what's been your experience, guys, with wood chip? Has it been good or has it been bad? If it's been bad, why has it been bad? Maybe was it because you didn't actually go deep enough on the first initial layer and you only had a slight dusting, which won't stop any weeds, and you will slip like mad on it because it's only a small area. But let me know in the comments, guys, what's your experience of using wood chip like this on the allotment? We use it multiple ways, paths, as a top mulch on some areas, mainly not for vegetable growing. It's great around trees. I put it on top of my blueberry pots just to keep some of the weeds at bay. We use it to start making our own compost just by leaving it alone, not having anything to do with it. I just think it's a wonderful free resource that every allotment holder really should be using, be it paths, be it compost, be it as a top dressing mulch for your flower beds or pots. Maybe this year you should be looking into using more wood chip.